Bitcoin. It's up some 50% this month alone, and with traders seeing no resistance until at least $20,000. Where to next? For more on that, we're joined by Matt Harry, fund manager at Digitalx. Thanks very much for talking to us, Matt.
You're quite welcome, guys. This is my second appearance in 3 days. I'm starting to feel like the Bitcoin Petrovsky.
Well,
which is,
yeah, of course, a lot has happened in those 3 days, Matt.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's always a very, very busy space. We have actually been trading sideways since we last spoke. We are consolidating around the highs, so still expecting a bit of a breakout. Market looked a little bit long for a while there, but global funding rates have reset. But certainly, I think the fact that I've appeared 2 times in 3 days is indicative of a growing amount of interest in the asset class and Bitcoin more specifically, and that's very much in line with what we're seeing at Digitalx at the moment.
I'm interested in the forecasting of Bitcoin though, because it's not that I'm skeptical, but I don't know how you forecast where Bitcoin goes going forward. Can you just give an idea for an investor that thinks, look, maybe I'll get into Bitcoin? How can you look ahead?
Yeah, look, it's a bit, to some extent, it's a bit of a finger in the air type of stuff. We have spent very little time trading above current market over the lifetime of Bitcoin. So once we sort of get up above, 16,500 US, it's very much fresh air. There is a little bit of resistance at 19,000. Once we break through 20,000, it's very much anyone's guess how far we go. We have seen some notable global macro type investors come out in the past couple of weeks and release some pretty serious topside targets. Raoul Paul, who many of your viewers will know from his Goldman Sachs hedge fund days, has said that the conversations he's having with the largest allocators around the globe, he believes there's a massive wall of money coming into the space, and he expects that Bitcoin could reach $1 million within the next 5 years. I don't know if we go that far that fast, but there's certainly a very rapidly increasing level of institutional participation and interest in the space.
Yeah, and is that, so as far as the institutions then looking for exposure, is that just been a recent phenomenon then?
Well, it's increased a lot in the past couple of years since that blow-off top in 2017, and so much so really now we're seeing institutional participation and acceptance at the highest levels. We've got Fidelity now providing custody for digital assets. They actually came out a couple of weeks ago and said that they believe now the risk in not holding any Bitcoin outweighs the risk of holding Bitcoin, so it's a pretty glowing endorsement. JP Morgan, who have clearly been active, your previous caller mentioned a few of the calls that they've been making as well. They've come out in the last week and said that they believe Bitcoin can challenge gold as the preferred store of value asset over time. And also, we've seen several notable public companies come out recently and purchase Bitcoin to hold on their balance sheet as part of their treasury strategy. So we've seen Jack Dorsey's Square purchase $50 million US dollars worth of Bitcoin. We've seen Michael Saylor's MicroStrategy purchase $470 million worth of Bitcoin to hold on balance sheet, and several well-known global scale investors like Stanley Druckenmiller recently came out and advocated for a holding portfolio allocation to Bitcoin as well. So at every level, there is increasing participation and interest, which is very different to how the market was in 2017.
Because it's interesting, it's often a thing that you think it's just millennials that are interested in Bitcoin. Is that not the case?
Look, it's not the case, but the millennials are a huge part of the market that's driving interest in this asset class. So you might be surprised to learn that the millennials as of 2020 have become the highest income generating demographic. So they've surpassed their baby boomer and Gen X parents. And you might say, why is that important? Well, it's important because millennials grew up in the shadow of the GFC, and market research has shown that they have a general mistrust for financial institutions, but they also grew up with technology, and they trust technology almost implicitly. And just as the, biases and preferences of their baby boomer parents before them drove the investment landscape, we expect the same thing to be the case for the millennials going forward. There was a study released by Charles Schwab in December of 2019 that actually showed, quite surprisingly, that on average, the fifth largest portfolio weighting in millennial portfolios is Bitcoin. And given that they are set to inherit $69 trillion US dollars worth of wealth from their baby boomer parents over the next 10 years, we see that as being a very strong ongoing source of demand over the coming decade for Bitcoin.
Okay, but the flip side, Matt, what challenges, so what's the downside that you see ahead?
Yeah, well, in terms of challenges, we like to speak about what we call the my grandmother test. Well, at my age, it's actually the my mother test now, so we'll refer to it as the my mother test, but that is to say, can my mother safely acquire and securely store her own Bitcoin? And at the moment, the answer really still is no. There's an unknown landscape of exchanges and OTC providers. I would say that in my close to 4 years in the digital asset space, approximately 50% of exchanges have ceased to exist, and they do get hacked. So if you're leaving assets on exchange, it is not a matter of if but when they will get stolen. So you need to really be able to understand the process behind effective cold storage. So that's where you store your assets in a hardware device that is air-gapped from the internet and preferably vaulted. So that's where Digitalx comes in. A lot of that stuff can be quite onerous and risky for private investors. So we've developed a single asset passive Bitcoin tracker that importantly has insured institutional grade custody attached to it. So it looks after all of the headaches that a lot of investors or challenges that a lot of investors face around safe acquisition and storage.
All right, Matt, Harry, appreciate your time on the program. Thanks so much for joining us.
Been great. Thank you.